Uh, well, the EU Parliament elections. We already talked about how. I'm gonna bring out something. We already talked about how there's a little bit of a change happening with Hungary, how the Fidesz party has gotten a little bit less, like there is this trend of people seeing an alternative to the domineering party of Fidesz, and the alternative is the opposition party created due to the horrible child abuse scandal that has, quite frankly, shook Hungary as a country and has led to ongoing anti-Orban protests. So that's basically what's happening with Hungary. In Germany, we have this unfortunate, very unfortunate turn of events of lunatic parties like the AfD gaining a lot of votes. In France, the right has gained so much ground that Macron has dissolved the parliament and did a sort of this quick thing. So France and Germany certainly are not in a good place when it comes to these things, but there are many aspects to this whole European Parliament election thing. In Poland, the Civic Coalition, by a very, very small margin, defeated the Law and Justice Party. But silver lining, at least from my perspective, is that the far-right lunatics that got into the European Parliament are not big enough in numbers to meaningfully form an anti-Ukrainian coalition. So that's good. It's good that this sort of disturbance is not viable as things turned out in the vote. Of course, there are gonna be many different topics like the refugee crises, immigration, and many other things that are gonna have to be. Well, we'll see how those topics will be going in the European Union, but it is good that at least the lunatics did not earn enough seats to form a meaningful anti-Ukrainian coalition, because that would have been a disaster. But thankfully, that is not what's happening. You know? There's a nice article at Kyiv Independent. European elections, far-right gains, center holds, Ukraine skeptics flounder, which is a thing that I like. I like it when Ukraine skeptics flounder. Interestingly enough, Ukraine skeptics actually lost out pretty significantly when it comes to the European Parliament in Slovakia, which the Slovakian government has been pretty vocally anti-Ukraine. So that is also a pretty good development from my personal point of view. React. Let us take a look at the article and see what we can glimpse from it. Last week's European Parliament elections toppled the French government, shifted European legislation to the right, yet kept mainstream bureaucrats at the steering wheel. So in other words, the far right has gained, but not quite enough to cause a big upset, thankfully. The center-right European People's Party remained the largest party in the 720-seated European Parliament, projected to have secured around 185 seats, which, of course, again, there's the topic of Ukraine, which we do not, as it seems, have to worry about. But then there's the topic of things that the right-wing parties within the European Parliament might agree. So, immigration policy, refugee sort of related things. We'll see how they will deal with the whole green order thing, which has been a huge topic within the European Union, which sort of in some countries like Poland does become a topic that is related to Ukraine, but we'll just have to see how that develops. Good night, Gatorade. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, a member of the EPP, was unequivocal in her assessment of the results. We won the European elections, von der Leyen said as the results were still being tallied on June 9th. This election has given us two messages. First, there remains a majority in the center for a strong Europe, and that is crucial for stability. In other words, the center is holding. Centrist parties retain a majority of votes following European Parliament elections that concluded on June 9th. The three mainstream parties, European People's Party, centre-left Socialists and Democrats, and the Liberal Renew Europe will receive over 400 seats, allowing them to form a majority and nominate the European Commission. Yet the far right made significant gains, particularly in Belgium, Germany, and France, where the results have rocked the domestic political scene. Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo accounted his resignation after a right-wing surge in both the national and European elections, while French President Emmanuel Macron calling snap parliament elections following a bitter loss. You can see this is like the results, which again, thankfully, the far right has not gained enough to push an anti-Ukrainian coalition. In France, the far-right national rally emerged as the projected winner, prompting Macron to unexpectedly call for snap parliament elections to be held at the end of June. Macron explained that he wanted to give the French people the choice of our parliamentary future through the vote. Macron's party, Renaissance, came second in European elections, gaining less than half of the national rally vote, with 15% and 31% accordingly. Macron's decision came as a surprise, his party leading an unstable yet workable minority government wouldn't require to compete in elections until 2027 if not for the president's decree to dissolve the parliament. Marine Le Pen, National Rally's parliamentary leader and former chair, said that her party was ready to take over power if the French give us their trust in the upcoming national elections. Le Pen has had a mixed track record on Russia, having repeatedly supported Russia and President Vladimir Putin before the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. She also made a number of controversial statements about Russia and Ukraine, such as the assertion that the illegal annexation of Crimea was justified. It was not justified. Like that's not even up to debate. That was unjustified. While Le Pen has claimed that she had changed her mind on Russia since 2022. Like, let's even begin with the fact that Crimea had had a certain amount of autonomy within Ukraine, right? It has a special autonomous status within Ukraine, and with Russia, that's just not the case. That's it. That alone is a pretty stark difference. While Le Pen has claimed that she had changed her mind on Russia since 2022, she has not publicly altered her position on Crimea since the beginning of the full-scale war. At a hearing in May 2023, Le Pen characterized the illegal annexation, which is widely condemned across the EU, as reattachment. Just reminded that Crimea wanted to be an autonomous region. Jordan Bardella, the National Rally's leader, has largely opted to lean on anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim sentiment, leaving foreign policy issues out of his party's campaign. Unlike the single-list proportional representation system used to elect members of the European Parliament, the French Parliament is elected via a two-round system in single-member constituencies. In the French system, a candidate must get over 50% to win the election, with the French president placing a bet that far-right candidates won't be able to get. Right expand in Germany, Italy. In Germany, the controversial far-right Alternative for Germany, AfD, gained 15 seats, while the center-right conservative Christian Union, Christian Social Union, CDU-CSU placed first, slightly short of 30%. And all the other, while AfD is a bunch of lunatics and it's very worrying, other right-wing parties also recognize just how much of a lunatic party the AfD is, and they just simply refuse to work with them, which is also a pretty good thing, all things considered, that the AfD is so bad that other right-wing parties outright refuse to work with them. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's Social Democracy Party came third. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's party, Right-Wing Brothers of Italy, won the most votes in Italy's European Parliament elections. Meloni has been publicly supportive of Ukraine. Meloni's coalition partner League Party, said to be further to the right and headed by Kremlin friendly Matteo Salvini, saw its support tumble, which is good. Despite ruling Italy together, the League and FDI are in different parliamentary groups in the European Parliament. The European Parliament's far-right Identity and Democracy group, which includes Salvini's League and National Rally, and until recently the AfD, is projected to increase its representation to 58 seats. In total, the far-right Identity and Democracy, nationalist conservatives and reformists, and the unaligned pro-Russian populist groups can account for over 200 seats, which is very bad. However, the conservatives and reformists group, while sharing some policies with the more radical groups, has publicly supported Ukraine and the Union's sanctions policy, which, again, we might see some bad turns within the EU when it comes to policy, like, again, immigration, refugees, etc. But when it comes to Ukraine, at least we don't have to worry about that. Paweł Zerka, a senior policy fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations, said that the main takeaway of the election results was the European Parliament's move to the right. At the same time, Zerka said that radical right parties did less well than previously feared, which I'm certainly glad. But the problem is that there are certain things that the radical right and the less radical right simply agree on. And this problem will compound. Like already the thing with the refugees quite a few years ago have been described as a huge humanitarian crisis that will just become worse and worse as time will go on. Tensions will rise. People will flee more and more regions that will become uninhabitable as time goes on. And as countries adopt pretty hostile policy against refugees for the most part, we will see possible border tensions as well. So, in this, at least in this sense, I'm quite worried about the move to the right of the European Union. Even if I don't have to worry about anti-Ukrainian sentiment prevailing. Ukraine's skeptic candidates flounder elsewhere. There were other signs of weakness among parties and candidates seen as more skeptical of support for Ukraine. In Slovakia, the liberal pro-EU party Progressive Slovakia came in first place, ahead of Prime Minister Robert Fico's ruling Smer party. Fico and Smer came to power on a populist platform in September 2023 and promised to end military aid to Ukraine. So I would consider this a pretty big win, the Slovakia thing, because the Slovakian government is very anti-Ukraine. In Poland, Prime Minister Donald Tusk's ruling Civic Coalition notched a narrow win against the Conservative Law and Justice Party, projected to gain 37.1, that's the Civic Coalition, of the vote, to Law and Justice's 36.2%. The far-right Confederation Party was projected to get only 12.1%, which to me personally, that's far too much. That's far more than Confederacy should have gotten, considering just how much of a cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs this party is. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's right-wing party Fidesz retained its majority, but saw its worst showing in decades, which is, again, shows that people are seeing a viable alternative to the Fidesz party, which hopefully this realization will grow and Fidesz influence will only wane. Fidesz gained 44% of the vote in a 10% decrease from the 2019 elections, as the opposition TISA party, led by Peter Magyar, received 30% of the votes, enough to send 7 delegates to the European Parliament. In Ireland, one of the most outspoken Ukraine skeptic candidates, Claire Daly, was trailing in the preliminary vote counts, ranking in 7th place as of the afternoon of June 10th. Mick Wallace, her political partner and another Ukraine skeptic lawmaker, is also fighting for re-election, but counts for his district have yet to be announced. Wallace and Daly are both on the far left on the political spectrum, but have nonetheless regularly defended Russia, refused to support resolutions condemning the full-scale invasion, and voting against sanctions. Unfortunately, there are countries in which the far left, as we would call it, is showing pro-Russian, anti-Ukrainian sentiment, which is extremely bizarre to me. I mean, I understand what it's all about for many of those people, but it's just completely backwards. Fighting Western hegemony, Western imperialism by supporting Russian imperialism is just bizarre. In a statement explaining her decision not to vote for a resolution to condemn the full-scale war, Daly said in June 2022 that she opposed the illegal aggression of Russia, but said she disagreed with a one-sided narrative that excuses the Western role in what is now happening. See? This is what I'm talking about. Fighting imperialism via supporting imperialism. Brilliant. Daly also called for a ceasefire and said she would not support the flooding of Ukraine with weapons. I mean, I will certainly support it. I would say that Ukraine is not being flooded with weapons enough. Ukraine needs more weapons. Dali also called for a ceasefire and said she would not support the flooding. I already read that. In an interview with the Irish Independent released earlier in June, Wallace said that he and Dali condemned the invasion from day one, but then went on to repeat Russian talking points, saying that it is a US NATO proxy war, and claimed that NATO going into Ukraine provoked Russia. The final results of the elections in Ireland may take several more days. So there we go. There we have it. There we have it. We'll see. I think that's the gist of it. I think we've streamed for long enough today. We've streamed for like 4 hours 37 minutes. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to see you tomorrow or today, depending on how you like to view it. We'll see you. Farewell and bye bye. Bye, 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 bye. Good night. Good night, everybody. Oh yeah, I might as well do something, do a trick with you all. I might as well do a little bit of a trick with you all. Hold on. Why not? Hold on. How do I do this? Oh no, too little people to count.